Good evening, Rabbi. Tonight we're going to discuss a very fascinating topic and also a very practical topic which a lot of people have to deal with. And it's also not very well known by everybody, so that's why we need to discuss this to increase the awareness of this thing. And what are we talking about, right? There's a very scary Gemara in Masechet Psachim. And over there it talks about something very interesting, about marriage, about weddings and so forth, So I'll read you the Gemara. I have it here with me. So it says like this, the Gemara. This is a Masechet Psachim, Daf Mem Tet Amud Aleph. It says over there, Tanya Rabbi Shimon Omer. It says, right, Rabbi Shimon said, who's Rabbi Shimon? Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, the big Kabbalist, the big Tana. Right? Everybody knows who he was. The great holy man. So it says, Kol Seudah She'ena Shel Mitzvah En Talmid Chacham Rashai Le'anot Mimena. Something unbelievable, right? Which is in itself a case study. It says that every Seudah, what is a Seudah? A meal, right? Every Seudah which is not a mitzvah Seudah, it's not a mitzvah, a Talmid Chacham is not allowed to enjoy that Seudah. He shouldn't be eating there. So when you hear something like that, the first thing that comes to mind, just like, let's say, like these people have, some people in our community, they like to go to restaurants, just like hang out, and order lots of food, and then get drunk, and have some wine and have some liquor and this, all kinds of stuff. They start to sing, and all kinds of, they get merry, and start singing and dancing. But, you ask them, like, what is this Seudah about? Like, what are you making this Seudah for, So what do they answer you? Nothing, like, just for nothing. There's no purpose in it. Just to enjoy some food, to get a nice... And so, that's what we're talking about in the simple sense. That people are going just to pig out, some restaurant, and then they drink and they eat and they have extra foods and all kinds of stuff. Eating fancy foods for no reason. So that's called Seudah, which is not a mitzvah. What does that mean? There's no mitzvah to have a Seudah like that. It's just for the honor of your stomach. There's no other. Right, so it says regarding that, a Talmid Chacham shouldn't be there to enjoy that Seudah. Right, so the question is why? Right? So you know what the answer is, right? The Talmid Chacham shouldn't have time for things like this. You know what I mean? He should be eating simple foods and sitting and learning Torah. You know what I mean? That's his job. So why are you sitting there in a restaurant, eating fancy foods? There's no mitzvah about this, about what you're doing. You just eat to satisfy your stomach, to enjoy your stomach. This is not the way of Talmid Chacham. Talmid Chacham is supposed to be in Torah, You're supposed to be eating the Torah, not eating fancy foods. There's a Gemara about this also. The Gemara says, right? Different place. It says that if you're wondering why you can't understand the Torah, like let's say you're studying, right? And you can't understand, like, it's not going in. So they say about a person like that, right? Before you wonder about that, wonder why are those fancy foods going into your stomach, Then you want, in other words, the reason why the Torah is not going in is because the fancy foods are going in. It doesn't go together, these two lifestyles. They don't mesh. If you want to be a Talmid Chacham, let go of the fancy foods, let go of that stuff, Don't go to steak houses, and fancy restaurants every day, and like partying, like as if, what are you partying about? What's the party? What there's a bar mitzvah, there's a brit milah, there's a wedding. What are you celebrating? Nothing. That your friend, right? One time they stopped him, the police, they told him, what do you do with your life? Nothing. You remember that, right? So they looked at each other. Nothing? Yeah, it's nothing. You're eating for nothing. You know what I mean? Eating fancy foods for nothing? So this is considered to be it's antithetical, to the life of a Talmid Chacham. To live like that. That's what it means. So therefore, you shouldn't be in a place like that. Just the the other day, my mother, had her birthday. She turned 80 years old. Can you imagine? So she should have good health. So what happened was that she went to a restaurant with some ladies. They had like some ladies get together, whatever. So over there, they saw some George. They went to the Georgian restaurants. Morani. What is it called? Whatever. Moronic, right? Whatever it is, right? So they were sitting there, having a meal, and for their birthday, and all of a sudden they see some other people, Georgians, over there. So these Georgians, I asked, like my daughter was also there with them, my daughter. So I asked them, what were they doing there, So they were just like eating. For what? No reason, just having a party, for no reason. Kaifi, kaifi. So what happened was that they were very nice about it, They came over to the table, where my mother was, and they paid for the whole meal, And they were very nice, There was a generous guy, a relative of mine actually, He came over there, he brought her flowers. It was a nice gesture, whatever. But what I mean to say is, that there are people like this, hanging around restaurants, going to fancy restaurants, just shooting the breeze, and there's no reason to be there. Like, what are you celebrating? Why are you making a party? What's the party for? What are you partying? What's the celebration? So a Talmid Chacham is not supposed to be in a place like that. That's what we're trying to say, right? So if it was just that, then okay, it would be very understood, very simple to understand that. No big chidush, no big novel idea there. But here, right, Rabbi Shimon says, that we're talking about something else. What does that mean? We're pinpointing here a specific issue, a topic. What does that mean? What kind of seudah are we talking about? We're talking about something which is going to surprise you, which is a wedding, So the truth is, a wedding is supposed to be actually a seudat mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to go to a wedding. Why is that? Because they're doing a mitzvah by getting married. Not like this guy, we talked about, he doesn't want to get married. All his life he doesn't want to get married, What kind of thing is that, right? So it's a mitzvah to get married. That's what I'm telling them. I'm telling him, listen, how long are you going to be a bum all your life, 60 years old? Do you want to get married? What kind of thing is that? So, but what I'm saying is, right, that usually what we say in Judaism is when you go to a wedding, it's a mitzvah to you're going to a mitzvah place. They're doing a mitzvah of getting married. But comes Rabbi Shimon and tells you something, right, a novel idea here, which is that not every marriage, not every wedding is a mitzvah. Depending on what? Depends on who's getting married. To who? Who's marrying who? You know what I mean? What does that mean? There are certain marriages which are good, healthy. It's a real mitzvah. There are certain marriages which are a disaster. You ever think about that for a second? So which one is a disaster, right? That you shouldn't go there. In other words, he's telling you, even though it's a wedding, it's not a mitzvah to be there, to eat there. Because according to who's getting married, there's no mitzvah going on. So you may think, what are we talking about? We're probably talking about intermarriage, A goy is marrying a Jew, We're not talking about that. That's obvious, right? It's clear. There's no mitzvah. As we said, we mentioned that before we started. But here we're talking about two Jews. And still there's no mitzvah. We're talking about the daughter of a Talmid Chacham who got married to an Amaretz. Or we're talking about the daughter of a Cohen that got married to a regular Jew, Amaretz. So these two things are not mitzvah. What does that mean? That when you have a daughter of a Cohen, now Cohen is supposed to be the holiest family of the Jewish people, Kohanim. They're priestly class, So they're supposed to be holy, they're supposed to be scholarly, they're supposed to be educated in Judaism and Torah. They're supposed to be teaching Torah as well. So when you have a marriage like that, where the daughter of a Talmid Chacham, who grew up in a holy family, is getting married to an Amaretz, what does that mean? A guy who knows nothing in Torah. Totally ignorant, And not so observant either, not very observant either. Negligent in Torah, negligent in mitzvot, ignorant. So there's no, says Rabbi Shimon, there's no mitzvah over there to get married like that. Why is that? Because you're wasting, it's a waste, right? This girl who grew up in a rabbinic family, who has all the skills to now make her own rabbinic family, is marrying an Am Haaretz, somebody who doesn't know nothing about Torah. It's a waste. You're wasting all that holiness, right, in an area which which has no benefit to anybody. Just the opposite, right? All that talent, all that holiness is getting wasted. So two things Rabbi Shimon says, right? One is we're talking about a person who, right, Am Aretz was marrying an ignorant person, marrying a daughter of a Cohen, or marrying the daughter of a Talmid Chacham. In both these cases, you're overshooting, right? That's the problem. In other words, you're overreaching. You know, like what are you doing, marrying a daughter of a Talmid Chacham when you yourself have no connection with Torah? What kind of thing is that, right? You're wasting all that holiness for nothing. You're taking it down the tube, taking it down the drain. So comes Rabbi Shimon and says over there's no mitzvah. So therefore, what? A Talmid Chacham shouldn't go to a wedding like that, because it's not a seudat mitzvah. It's not a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah. It's not a mitzvah meal to be there. That's one thing. So okay, fine. So comes the Gemara. And says something even stronger about this. You know what it says, right? So, Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan, Bat Cohen leIsrael en zivugan ole yafeh. So what happens is like this, right? Not only is this marriage not a mitzvah, but also it has a very bad mazal as well. What does that mean, bad mazal? That if an ignorant person in Torah marries the daughter of a Cohen, what's going to be is that their marriage won't turn out good. Their marriage is going to be, excuse my candor, right? It's going to be a disaster. Why should it be a disaster? What's the reason why? So you know what it says. You know what it says? That since you're taking somebody who doesn't belong to you, that lady is much from a holier place than you are, and you're just a regular dude. You're just a regular guy. Right? So what's going to be is they're going to punish you somebody. Either they're going to punish the husband, or they're going to punish the wife. Meaning what? One of them will die or get sick. Some tragedy is going to happen to them. It's not going to go well, the marriage. Why is that? Because you're taking the daughter of a Cohen, the daughter of Aharon. As you said, right? Aharon, who was the brother of Moshe. Right? This is a very holy family. You know who you're dealing with over here? You know what I mean? You're talking with the daughter of Aharon. You're taking her, what? To be Am Haaretz, to be an ignorant person? To watch TV, and to watch movies? This is what you're taking her for? So that's not a mitzvah. Not only is it not a mitzvah, comes and says, Rabbi Yochanan, it's considered to be also a disaster. What does that mean? There's going to be some kind of a disaster there. Can you imagine? Their marriage won't go well. Somebody's going to get punished over there. So now he describes you, right, in this Gemara. What does that mean? How are they going to get punished? We already mentioned. But here it mentions it more specifically, right? Amar Rav Chazda, o almana, o grusha, o zera en la. It's going to be like either she'll be a widow, or she'll get divorced, or she won't have any children, right? And there's also brings another source, matnita, right, which is a braita. It says over there, o kover, o kovarto. What does that mean? One will bury the other. Either she will bury him, or he will bury her. In other words, one of them is gonna die, Lord. That's what's gonna happen. Or meviatoli de aniut. Can you imagine? Or she will bring him to poverty. In other words, they'll be living in poverty because of this. So either way, right? All these things are very, very bad. Okay, very good. And now you understand, right, how severe it is. So comes now the Gemara asks a question. But it says, how can you say that, right? That a person who marries a daughter of a Cohen is going to become poor. It says just the opposite, right? There's a teaching that says that if you want to get rich, what should you do? Marry the daughter of a Cohen. So just the opposite of what we just said, right? We just said that marrying the daughter of a Cohen makes you poor. Now we're saying that marrying a daughter of a Cohen makes you rich. So which one is the truth? So answers the Gemara over here. Ha be'tamid chacham, ha be'amaretz. One is talking about Tamid Chacham. What does that mean? If Tamid Chacham marries a daughter of a Cohen, it'll make him rich. Why? Because it goes well together. It goes together well. What does that mean? On the one side, you have the Kehuna, you have the priesthood, which is a holy institution, and also on the other side, he's a Tamid Chacham. So you have Torah and priesthood in one place. They're both holy institutions, so therefore they're going to get rich. They're going to be rewarded with wealth. But if he marries a Amaretz, a person who's ignorant in Torah, so then there's going to be poverty over there. That's the idea. Right? So depending on the situation, right? That's the idea. So now, Gemara doesn't stop there. It brings you even examples of people who did this, and what happened to them. Accounts, right? Personal accounts of this whole situation. So it gives you like 3 cases over here. So this is what it says, right? Rabbi Yoshua Nasid Kahanta Chalash Amar Nicha Le Le'aron Lidabek Bezar De'avele Chatana Lo Nicha Le. So you know what happens? It says that Rabbi Yoshua married a daughter of a Cohen, and he got ill. He got sick. So right away, what he did was he attributed it to what? To the fact that he married a daughter of a Cohen. He said, the reason why I got sick is because they don't want me to marry a daughter of a Cohen. Brings another case, right? Another situation like that. So it says, Ki ana Rav Idi bar Avin Nasib Kahanta Nafku Mine Tre Bene. Right. So then there's also another rabbi who married the daughter of a Kohen and came out from him, very big rabbis. So in other words, he got rewarded with good children because he married the daughter of a Kohen. So now it gives you 2 examples, right? One example is that one guy, he married the daughter of a Kohen, he got sick, and he attributed to that. Another case is that somebody else married the daughter of a Kohen, and he actually got rewarded with having good children, with children rabbis. So then what comes out of that? These 2 contradict each other, these 2 stories, apparently. So it gives you another one. Rav Shesha Bred Ravidi, Rav Yoshua, Rav Yevidim, Amar Rapapa Elo Nasiv Nakanta Lait Arai. Right, these rabbis said something else. They said, if I wouldn't have married a daughter of a Kohen, I wouldn't have gotten rich. In other words, that's what made me rich. The fact that I married the daughter of a Kohen. So Rav Kahana says just the opposite, right? He says, the reason why I went to exile, I was exiled away from my land, is because I married the daughter of a Kohen. I was punished. So we have here 4 different examples of people who married the daughters of Cohen, and each one got a different result. So the question is, what's the bottom line, right? How does that add up? What's the conclusion of this Gemara? It seems like a confusion, right? So bottom line is like this, right? It says in the end that comes out like this, right? If you look in the Rambam, and if you look in the Shulchan Aruch, how they paskin, how they formulate the halakha here, what they say is that you can marry Bat Kohen, daughter of Kohen, you should only marry if you're Tamid Chacham. Otherwise, you shouldn't marry daughter of Kohen. Because what's going to happen is somebody's going to get punished over there. Somebody's going to get messed up over there. So that seems to be the conclusion from all this. Right? Even though there are others, by the way, who argue and learn this sugya differently, they learn this topic matter a little bit differently. But the bottom line is that the Shulchan Aruch, who says that you should not. But the truth is, that the question is like this, right? Now that we understand what we're talking about a little bit, the question is, what does it mean Am Haaretz? What does it mean Tamid Chacham? Right? You have to define these terms, right? Is every rabbi called Tamid Chacham, or is every person who's not a rabbi, we call him Am Haaretz? How does that work? So the truth is, in the Gemara itself, there's many different definitions about what is Am Haaretz, in general, right, the term Am Haaretz means like ignorant person, a person who's disconnected from, from religion, like somebody, Right away somebody comes to your mind, right? You're thinking about somebody already, right? Same thing to me also, same thing, believe me when I tell you, right? So, it's all relative also, you know what I mean? What I mean to say is that, depending on your level, like, if you're like super, super religious, to you, like a religious guy can be Am Haaretz.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
And if you're like, a little religious, then the person who's not religious at all, he's to you an Am Haaretz, You know what I mean? But depending on it's a relativity also is going on.
Sure.
It's all relative.
Yeah.
But the truth is, the fact that it's relative is true. You can never, by the way, there's a joke, but it's actually a true story. They say that, one of the great scholars of this generation was Rabbi Feinstein, who lived in Russia and then he moved to America, and he opened the yeshivot in New York, New York City. He was living in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan. He was living over there. He was a big posek, big chacham. So Rabbi Feinstein, there's a story like this, it's probably a true story. You can't make these things up. So they say, right, that his custom was, Rabbi Feinstein, he used to get up every morning very early, like 4 a.m. You know what I mean? 4 a.m. got up, So why would a person get up at 4 a.m.? In other words, it's too early to even pray Shachrit, It's not even dawn yet. It's before dawn, So you can't pray Shachrit at 4 a.m. Why would you get up at 4 a.m.? So you know why the rabbis get up at 4 a.m., Not to pray. They get up to study Torah. It's considered to be a very big ma'ila, right? Big ma'ala, big mitzvah it is, right? To study Torah at that time. After midnight, before the dawn. According to Zohar Kadosh, according to Kabbalah, blah, blah, blah. So, now, it was something interesting, right? They say that was his custom, right? Every day he would get up at 4 a.m. No matter what. So, sometimes his wife, the Rebbitzin, the Rabbanit, is to see him, getting up at 4, So, you know how wives are, right? Especially Jewish wives, right? You know how they are. So she tells him like this, right? Says, Moshe, calls him Moshe, his name is Moshe, Moshe says, why are you getting up so early? He says, rest a little bit, Get some rest and get up a little bit later. It's not good for your health. You know how women are, They get inside your intestines, they get...
Yeah.
So you know what he answered her, right? When she said this, he says, "What do you want me to do? What I should remain Am Haaretz all my life?" In other words, he was trying to tell her, if I don't study more, I'll be Am Haaretz all my life, So is that really true? Was he Am Haaretz? No, he was actually a big chacham, But as a matter of humility, he called himself an Am Haaretz. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's another thing. It's all relative. You know what I mean? Like you could also call yourself Am Haaretz. Even if you're a big chacham, you can call yourself Am Haaretz. But the truth is, besides the fact that it's all relative, which is also true, but there is also definitions, about what Am Haaretz is. You know what I mean? So Gemara talks about several things. Like several definitions it gives. For instance, a person doesn't say Kriyat Shema. Like Shema Yisrael Tzaddik Zachis. He doesn't say every day Kriyat Shema. Or he doesn't put tefillin, another one, right? Or he doesn't have tzitzit, he doesn't put tzitzit. He doesn't, all kinds of things like this, right? He has a garment, no tzitzit. Four-corner garment, right? You have to have a four-corner garment for that. All kinds of things like this, right? All kinds of definitions. So, the bottom line, all these definitions have one common denominator, which is that it means that you're not really so devout in religion, You're not so religious, you know what I mean? Basically, that's what it means. You're like kind of like, detached, like, we call that in Hebrew, menutak, you're like cut off a little bit, you're cut down. But the truth is, that also there's another general definition of what is Am Haaretz, which is the basic definition that most people associate with that term, which is a person who's ignorant in Torah, doesn't have any Torah knowledge. You know what I mean? Like, he's just a piece of wood, doesn't have any spiritual element in his mind. Everything's physical, like When do I go to work? When do I go to sleep? When do I eat? Everything physical. But spiritual doesn't exist. There's no Torah there. There's nothing. Never talks about Torah. Torah is not a part of his life. So a person like that is really the essence of what's Amaretz is. Like a person like a person who's attached to the earth. Like has no spiritual element to him. Amaretz. So anyway, right? Okay, we understand more or less what that is. And what about Talmid Chacham? What is Talmid Chacham? Right? Like these two, they're Talmid Chacham. The truth is, that they're not. I mean, that's the truth. So what is Talmid Chacham? Talmid Chacham means you're a person who is on a regular basis studying Torah. That's your main profession. It's your main occupation. You may have also other things that you do. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. You write some mezuzot, you write some tefillin. I don't know, whatever it is, right? Or you do something on the side a little bit. It's possible. But Amaretz means that your main bread and butter, occupation in this world is Torah. I'm sorry, not Amaretz. Talmid Chacham, right? Talmid Chacham, that's what it means. Talmid Chacham is a person who's devoted to Torah. That's what it is. So with these definitions, right, now let's come now to the issue of Bat Cohen, right, the daughter of a Cohen. So as we said, right, that it's dangerous for a daughter of a Cohen to marry a Ma'aretz, somebody who's ignorant in Torah. Because we said, right, a tragedy could occur. Very, very, very readily could occur. In fact, from what they're saying, it will occur. It's not a matter of it could. It will. You know what I mean? That's what they're saying. It's not a matter of perchance it may. That's not the issue. Right? So what do we see? What do we see from there? That Bemet, right, practically speaking, a person also Maran Rabbi Shalom, he has a tshuva in his book Yechavedat. Chelek, the 5th volume, over there he talks about this issue. And he also comes up with the same conclusion basically. But he gives you a little bit of a twist, which is what? The twist is that you don't have to be such a Talmid Chacham, to be considered a Talmid Chacham for this purpose. Doesn't mean you have to be a big posek, like Ramosha Weinstein, or Ovadia Yosef, Maran Ovadia. Not like that. Doesn't mean like that. You don't have to be on that level, according to what he says. So what does it have to be? It has to be that at least you're a person who's largely religious, and devout. One thing. And number two, also, you do study Torah on a daily basis. You have a Torah program every day. So you are involved in Torah on a daily basis, on a regular basis. That's one thing. Number two, also that you're devout. You take halacha seriously, Jewish law. You keep halacha, you keep Jewish law. You're devout. You don't mess around. And do all kinds of things which are against halacha. God-fearing person. So bottom line is like this, right? That a person who wants to marry a Bat Kohen, a daughter of a Kohen, really the truth is you should be careful. What does that mean? Be careful. Don't marry a daughter of a Kohen unless you are really a person who's a top-notch Jew. Religious, devout, devoted, and also study Torah on a daily basis. Whether it's by yourself or with a chavuta, or you go to a lecture every day, or some kind of a shiur, or some kind of a program. You're in a learning program or whatever it is, at least that much. But the truth is, according to the simple meaning, it's more like somebody who, is like learning Torah, more seriously. That's what a Talmid Chacham really is, Somebody who takes Torah seriously. He learns it just more than just some kind of a, like a kindergarten kind of style, He's really serious about it. He learns it with iyun, with the devotion, with the concentration. He's devoted to it. He spends a lot of time there. His main energy goes there. His main devotion is there. So a person who's like that, then he's like almost like a Talmid Chacham. So that's already good enough, Or somebody, let's say, who learns in yeshiva, or he learns in a kollel, but he's not really a posek or a rosh yeshiva or something like that. He's not like a big scholar, but he's on the way. He's involved with that. So if you're involved, you're part of the Torah world. That's already gives you a passing grade. But the truth is, that the real proper thing is, if you want to marry daughter of Cohen and you want to be blessed from that, and you want to get rich, because it's going to make you wealthy, if under the right conditions. What does that mean? If you're a Talmid Chacham, if you're a Torah scholar, right, and and this is the way to get wealthy. How do you do it? By marrying a Bat Kohen. But if you're really a good scholar, somebody who's a serious scholar, so then what's going to be is that you're going to get rich. But if you're not on that level of being a real, true scholar, you might not get rich from that, because it's not really your place to marry a daughter of Talmid Kohen. It's not really your place. You can pass, we'll pass you, You get a passing grade, but it's not really your place. So whose place is it really to marry a daughter of Cohen? A person who's a real Torah scholar, somebody who's really devoted to Torah, on a serious level. I'm not telling you that he has to be studying Torah all day. That's the best thing, but that's not necessary. But the most important thing is that he has to be, focused and take Torah seriously. He has to be devout. So what does that mean? A person should not, if he's not on that level, that he's not devoted to Torah on some level, on a daily basis, on a regular basis, and he's not devout in observance of halakha, of the Jewish law, he has no business marrying a daughter of a Kohen. So that's the bottom line. So what does that mean? The truth is, that something interesting I want to tell you. Always people ask me about this, by the way, and I've written posts about this also, by the way. I've made videos sometime also talking about this. They ask me always, why does the Georgian community they don't have a lot of Kohanim? They have only very little, So the truth is, that there is actually a story that I've heard from the rabbis, of the Georgian rabbis, that when Ezra Sofer, when he was trying to bring the Jews back to the Second Temple, he was the leader of that era, Ezra Sofer. So what happened was that Ezra, he went to all kinds of places like Yemen, Teman, and other places. He went to Georgia also, and he told them, come back to live in Eretz Israel. We're building a second temple. So a lot of the communities didn't want to come back, and the Georgians were one of them. They didn't want to come back. So what happened was that Ezra told them, okay, at least if you don't want to come back, give me your Kohanim and Leviim, He said, I'll take them, and he took them. That's what he did. So they gave them over, and they went back with Ezra, So this is why the Georgian Jews were depleted from the Kohanim and Leviim. This is what happened, That's why they don't have a lot. So it's not so common by us, in our society, in our community, the issue of having Kohanim. We have a few, but not that much. In Israel, there's more. But, in the Bukharian community over here, in Regal Park, Forest Hills, and all over Queens, and all over the world, they do have actually a healthy number of Kohanim. They do. So in a case like that, in their community, they have to be a little bit more careful. What does that mean? That the daughters of the Kohanim should not be marrying people who are not really devout, religious, and Torah-oriented Jews. Should not be marrying into a family like that, because God forbid, it's promising you that something is going to happen if you do that. You know what I mean? So you got to be careful. Don't take it as a joke. By the way, there's also another element, which is that some people want to say, there are some rabbis want to say that today it's not so serious, this thing. Why not so serious? Because the truth is that, many of the Kohanim, the Kohanic families today, are not so real. What does that mean? That they've already been disqualified from the Kohanim, because they didn't marry into the proper way, into the proper families, and so forth and so on. They were marrying divorced women and all kinds of things. So because of that, they were disqualified. So the truth is, that many of the Kohanic families who were originally Kohanim have already been disqualified because of they didn't take care of their status by marrying the right women. So what they want to say is that, since these women, since these families have already been largely disqualified, there's a book, by the way, that talks about this, something really funny, There's one Ma'amar of the Chazal, one teaching of the sages. You know what they say, right? They say that if 300 Kohanim come to Jerusalem and bless the people, Mashiach will come right away.
Man, 300
Kohanim, yeah, right. Not Kohanot,
yeah.
right? So
the women are never involved in blessing anybody.
right, you're right. We cut the Kohanim, blessing of the Kohanim. So they come, right? So if 300 come to Jerusalem and they bless the people, Mashiach will come right away. So it's funny, there's a book that talks about this, that when they started coming back to Israel, the Jews, in big numbers, they already had a lot of Kohanim over there, more than 300. And they were blessing the people, So they were doing the blessings, no Mashiach. Where's Mashiach? Where is he? So, they say, right, that one time this rabbi, who wrote this book, he saw Eliyahu Hanavi, who's like an angel now. So he saw him one day in Yerushalayim, and he told him, he says, doesn't it say, in the Chazal, the sages, don't they say that if 300 people bless the 300 Kohanim bless the people, Mashiach will come and says, here we see that's happening every time, they do it and we don't see Mashiach coming. Right? So, what the Eliyahu Hanavi told him, this rabbi? He told him, he says, I hate to disappoint you, but you should know that all the Kohanim over there who are blessing the people, none of them are real Kohanim. They're all fake. Fake news. He says, so now look what he tells them. He tells them, not only that, the most of them are not real, but he says, there's only one real guy there in the whole group. Let's say like there's 500, whatever. Only one real guy. So he says, and he's also a problem. You know why? Because he's crippled, so he's disqualified from doing the service in the Kohanim. You cannot when you're crippled, you cannot do, you're blemished. So he says he's blemished, he's a blemished Kohen. There's only one and he's blemished. So why do I tell you this story? Because we see from there, right, that largely many of the Kohanic families have already been disqualified because they didn't marry the right people and so forth and so on, the right women. So that disqualifies, by the way, the family if they marry the wrong kind of woman, like a divorced woman or a woman who was a promiscuous woman or something like that. So, but nevertheless, a person who has a tradition in his family, that they're Kohanim, we still should be careful about that. What does that mean? They shouldn't marry, their daughters should not marry like ignorant, Jews, who are ignorant in Torah, not very observant, like very wishy-washy, observance. They shouldn't marry somebody like that. So who should I marry? Only somebody who's in Torah, they're studying Torah on a regular basis, and devout, observing the mitzvot, observing the halakha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us only good tidings and only good things, only good news, and we should have Biat HaMashiach Tzidkenu B'mehera V'Amenu Amen V'Amen. Thanks for coming. Chazak u'Baruch. Be blessed with wealth, health, and happiness.
Amen.
Amen.